behind. Take my hand, just you and I are gonna shine. Welcome, one and all, to the Nameless Nerds broadcast, the show that does not hate, but instead gives free, reassuring cuddles to your inner nerd. So, for those of you who checked out the recording of last week's broadcast, you saw us exploring the squishy depths of the history to the X-Men franchise, leading up to the last blockbuster, Days of Future Past. Today, we, the Nameless Nerds, will be doing an admittedly belated exploration of the most recent movie to grace the franchise, X-Men Apocalypse.
Blah, 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 blah. Stop. Once again, talking. And what, should I go get my miniskirt and pom-poms? That song, man. What was that?
That was Shine from the soundtrack to a very cool series called Ruby.
Only if you're a 13-year-old little girl.
Hey.
There was so much bubble gum in that, I think it stuck to the bottom of my shoe.
That's because I didn't play it all the way through, and
Thank God.
Trust me, it's hardly bubble gum.
It sounded like the Sailor Moon song. What a crappy intro.
Have you ever watched any of the Sailor Moon shows or heard any of their music?
Dude, dressing up like a little blonde Asian girl just does not trip my trigger. But if it's your thing and it's in your closet, it's okay.
Interesting enough, Ruby isn't Japanese or Asian. It's actually American. Now, anyway, as I was trying to say about...
Well, we're here to talk about X-Men, the new movie. I don't know what you're getting ready to say.
Yep, well, that's exactly what I'm talking about, and that's what I wanted to talk about, X-Men Apocalypse. And this skips ahead 10 years after the events in Days of Future Past. And in the movie, we see the mutant-human relations at an all-time high, and the world apparently in peace. That is, until an ancient evil in the form of Apocalypse arrives after centuries of slumber. Apocalypse in the movie is one of the first mutants, if not the very first, and he sees the state of the world and decides to remake the world in his own image and puts the reins of power.
Are you reading a press release?
No, I'm reading my release.
That's impressive.
And that's all I wanted to say about that, because now we can get into the meat of the discussion. Now,
yeah. Go right ahead.
Well, if you want to just say right off the cuff what I thought about the movie, well, I personally liked it a lot, but it's not without its problems. But I can get into that in just a few. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to hold my judgment in reserve for a moment and listen to what someone like you has to say.
Okay. I like the fact that they jumped forward about 10 years and put this thing in the 80s because, well, the 80s to me was really, it's very nostalgic for me because I grew up in the 80s. I like the fact that they focused on the origins of some really popular X-Men, but, well, okay, I don't want to do the but yet. I like the fact that they brought in the biggest threat level foe in the X-Men universe, Apocalypse, and they made him look really cool. Now, Oscar Isaac, to me, kind of chewed up every scene that he was in, but there's another big but attached to that, which I will get into later.
I like big butts, and I cannot lie. Sorry, go ahead.
And James, and of course, I like the fact that James McAvoy and who played Magneto, can't remember right off the... Oh, Michael Fassbender. Michael Fassbender still delivered great performances for their characters. And also, I like how the movie, revealed some things. This one particular thing is how Professor X got his bald head, which is kind of funny. I mean, James McAvoy, really...
Charles, you cannot save me. I am destined to be this way. Yeah, keep going.
What?
Charles, you cannot save me. I was destined to be this way. I am Magneto. Keep going.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, that's kind of how things ended up for him. And it seems like it was some kind of destiny he can't escape. But I don't want to get into that just yet. I'm talking about what I liked about the movie. And let me see. Well, I like the whole fact that the whole interplay between Havoc and Cyclops. I kept to stop myself from saying Magneto. Havoc and Cyclops, and also, of course, the fact that when Quicksilver comes in, he steals the show yet again with one of those really...
He didn't steal the show.
Well, that's your opinion. Yeah, as a dude would say, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Oh God, they still let you into the movie theater. Oh my
You know,
goodness.
and speaking of opinions, oh, and by the way, I also liked how they really raised the bar here when it came to just what was at stake. Now, once again, there are some buts attached to that, but no, that was not intended. I want to hear what you have to say.
I can speak. Hey, wow. But I did kind of want to hear what you had to say, but I'm a little confused about something. What was at stake?
Well, for one thing, look what apocalypse ended up causing. I mean, ripping entire cities out of the basically out of the planet, or tearing them apart, 2012 style.
Well, what he did was he gave a series of individuals the empowerment to control their own world.
Right, and okay, but the thing about it was when he didn't just give them the power to control their own world, he manipulated them.
Well, let's get to a really key point here that you did bring up. Okay, from a storytelling point, which I really like, good story, why? There are just a couple of elements that are out of place for me, and we're going to go there immediately. How come no one made a comment about the blue guy walking around the mall, even in passing? That's number one. And why would a bunch of kids in mid-1983 get into a 46 Packard convertible and think it would be cool? What, no one had a better car?
If you mean maybe that Professor X might have owned a Pontiac Trans Am with a little oscillating thing like Kit, that probably wasn't happening. And well,
I mean, a different car. I mean, in 1983, a cool older car would have been a cool older two-door car would have been a Cadillac Eldorado from 1970. Now that would have fit in place with that story of them being in a convertible, but I don't want to nitpick that one. And I always like the convenient fact that Quicksilver, I always show up a little bit late. Okay, we're talking about the boredest, insane person that everything looks like is moving in slow motion, being trapped in his mother's basement. That's pretty much like trapping a sane person in an insane asylum and telling them to stand still and try not to leave or make sense of the checkers game being played with chess pieces.
you actually assumed that Quicksilver was trapped in his mother's basement, that he didn't get out.
Those were his words.
You do know the definition of hyperbole, right?
Well, yeah. I understand that it was offered up as humor, interjection, satire, an attempt to negate the seriousness of the complexity of the subject. Yeah, I got that. But
I mean, maybe he didn't exactly have much of a social life, I guess. He seemed to be the type of person who, when not going about saving the world, was content to just be in his little basement world playing video games.
But yet we're led to believe that he stayed in his mother's basement for a decade and didn't tour the world, didn't have a good time, didn't hang out, didn't run to London one afternoon.
You're the only one assuming that.
No. These things were not left in evidence in the story. Also, there's a big give here toward the end of this.
No one in that show goes to the bathroom either, but I'm pretty sure you can assume people go to the bathroom.
Well, Stryker does, but that's a different conversation. But then, have you ever watched 24?
No, I was never a fan.
Don't worry, you didn't miss anything that couldn't be summed up in 20 minutes. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Here's a better view of this movie. Where do you want me to come at it from? Do you want me to tell you all the good things I felt about it? Do you want me to tell you all the bad things I felt about it? Do you care?
Well, yeah, talk about the good things. Talk about the bad.
The good things. Costuming, cinematography, the first 20 minutes were great. Major to minor problem, I'm an omnipotent being for the most part, and technology is at a minimum. and I willingly walk into a building that I know is going to collapse, and I'm comfortable with that move.
Okay, he doesn't know the building's going to collapse.
Well, being an omnipotent being walking into a building
doesn't mean omniscient, and no one ever said he was omnipotent. If he was omnipotent, he wouldn't have needed to acquire Professor X's powers. Spoiler.
I concur, but still, the setup of the story of him walking into "quote unquote" a building with low technology that was designed to collapse, and he didn't know that he was in that building for it to collapse. That's a little shaky. But I also understand from a writing standpoint, they did need something to be able to move the story to a certain point. And I love it. I like it. And I agree with it. The visuals were great. And it was nice to see brown people in Egypt at a time when brown people should have been in Egypt. All of that made a little bit of sense, or what we are assuming to be a African continent Egyptian style location with pyramids. Today, all we know is Egypt. Or that style of pyramids equal Egypt. Those things. Yes, your turn.
I was just going to say, I just would never thought about, why you would be surprised for there to actually be people of Middle Eastern descent in a Middle Eastern country. But that's just my take. Now,
have you not seen modern Hollywood's take on films like Cleopatra?
Cleopatra was made in the '60s, where somebody who was a little bit darker than Yul Brynner was considered too ethnic. Okay.
Well, how do you explain Gods of Egypt?
Somebody had did a lot of cocaine and probably watched a lot of Power Rangers and just said, "Hey, I can do something with this."
Well, I mean, John Turturro as an Egyptian pharaoh is just funny within itself, and I get the humor of that. But you got to reference "Do the Right Thing" to get that joke. But not here in this case. That is something I liked about Apocalypse. It was a nice introduction. It gave you this great, vast view of this beginning, and it explained a little piece of information to you that was kind of important. And then moving forward in the story, to have Moira MacTaggart be the person to accidentally wind up in the tomb that she accidentally found and survived and was able to report back.
Well, was having Moira MacTaggart there at all.
Well, I found that to be an abnormal setting and a little bit out of place.
Okay.
So in addition to that was a little out of place for me, but still a likable point in the story to bring humanity to Charles Xavier and move the story along.
True. I mean, I did like that kind of side thing, and I'd forgotten how in First Class he basically caused her to lose her memory. And when you really think about it, yeah, it was kind of a dick thing to do. And so, and I think the professor. Well, of course, the professor did realize that in the end. I don't want to reel too much for that, but let me see. Apocalypse as a villain, it's kind of. I mean, personally, one of the things I liked about him was just the way he looked. He looked like a really cool rendition of how Apocalypse looked in the comics. And to be completely honest, the way Apocalypse looked in the comics was kind of dorky. This was really cool looking, with that sort of Egyptian motif. Even though the blue, I guess something. On the big screen, blue was a little off-putting, but at least he didn't look like Ivan Ooze like a lot of people thought he was going to look when they did that funky production picture in really bad lighting. Yeah.
Well, for one, I think that it was the visuals for the entire thing were correctly done and maintained. I love that.
Well, Oscar Isaac's performance as Apocalypse.
Hey.
He did a good job trying to portray larger than life villain, someone who did have sort of a god complex about him. However, I don't know. And I do have to agree with other critics.
Hey, what do I think?
I was about to ask you, but I was just going to say that personally, I didn't. I just felt that it was missing something. But what do you think?
About what?
Oh, now, okay. So you ask me, what do you think? And then when I give you the opportunity to say what you think, then you're saying about what?
But you ask me a question and you continuously find a way to not let me say it. I mean, are you afraid that I'm going to debunk your opinion and actually say something that would make you think twice?
Now, maybe I'm just being a little too hasty. Go ahead.
You're not being too hasty. What exact question did you want to know the answer to?
I wasn't asking you anything.
Okay, I'll let you run the show by yourself. Go right ahead. Don't bother me. I'll just watch. I think you could talk. I think you could talk for another 48 minutes by yourself.
Anyway.
So now that you understand that you can't do that, let's get back to what my general opinion was. Because I just got into the part where I felt the movie was actually visually quaint, beautifully presented. I think that they spent a lot of time on making sure that you were so wrapped up into how good the movie looked that you didn't care about anything else. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I disagree because I still, especially coming out of the theater, I did care about, like for instance, comes up as one of those buts, the fact that they really shortchanged a lot of the cast. That this was once again, as we had discussed last week, an issue that has been trailing the X-Men behind like a stink, and that is some of the movies put too many characters in there and do not develop some of them enough. Psylocke, Angel, Storm, to name three, and what really could be Psylocke. But
this goes back to my original statement. Specifically in the X-Men movies, female characters are muted on purpose because it's sending a silent message to young men between the ages of 8 and 50, and especially young impressionable men between the ages of 8 and 25, that women should look fabulous, sexy, and regardless of what their power is or how strong they are, they should just follow the guy and be quiet and come along and do what they're supposed to do. And I think that's a bad image and a bad precedent to set for young women. And I think it's also a worse precedent to set for young men. But I want to come back to that later. Is that okay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can talk about that now because I'm sorry, but I disagree. I don't think that the X-Men was trying to do that ever in any of their movies. Had, for instance, in the first movie, you had Rogue, who was a central piece of the movie. X-Men, not first class, but X-Men. Well, even in First Class, in Days of Future Past, Mystique was, she had a very present part and did speak often. Let me see. I'm trying to think. In X-Men, in X2, Famke Janssen was the focal point. Actually, in X2 and X3, Famke Janssen as Jean Grey was one of the focal characters. Two of the focal. Excuse me. So, and she wasn't just there to sit around and look pretty.
I said muted. I didn't say a non-central character here.
She wasn't even muted. She was the central focus of X3, for instance.
Listen to these points of dialogue. Why are you being so much less? You could be so much more. Those words being said by a man to a woman and giving her the permission to be powerful is muting her inner ability while giving her an assumed power. I understand this isn't a perfect statement because the character Apocalypse uses that lure for everyone that he teases into his web or his scheme of activity. But it's specifically when said to someone who is seen or deemed as underprivileged or underutilized, underwhelmed, undereducated, underable. When you say those things to them on screen and you portray that image, that resonates through that core group of people. You don't have to agree and you don't have to see it and you don't have to understand. I'm giving you a piece of psychological information that's true. And later, much later, you'll come to it. And that's not saying that you can't see it now. It's not saying that you're incapable of seeing it. It is simply putting new information in front of you and how people are seen on screen. And yes, you are correct. In X-Men, where they tore away the San Francisco Bridge and rode in on it, all of that was Jean Grey's power at work. But yet she was still being controlled by a man. She was being controlled by Magneto in that essence.
Now that I will give you in that, yeah, all the female characters to some extent were being controlled by a man. I mean, in the end, Rogue was kind of being manipulated by Magneto in the first movie. Sebastian Shaw had the White Queen as his lackey in X-Men First Class.
But now, once again, we're all over the X-Men road, and we're trying to talk about Apocalypse. And I'm glad that you do recognize those things, but bring that to the current movie, and where you were talking about, I think, Psylocke, is that correct?
Right, and if you give me a second, I was about to go up to that. I was just reaching back to say, okay, yeah, we did see it in this movie, in this movie, in this movie, and yeah, we do see it in X-Men Apocalypse. Psylocke, to me, was Psylocke and, no, Jubilee is a totally different animal. But anyway, Psylocke was, one of the most egregious in the movie. First of all, I love Olivia Munn. I've loved her ever since she was on Attack of the Show back in G4 TV. And so I was really hoping this would be a good breakout role for her. And she barely got 3 lines. And only was there to look like a ninja with a samurai sword and a psychic blade. And then she never even used the psychic blade. I mean, wow.
She used a psychic whip. That's more credible.
Not according to someone who's a fan of the comics, where she never used a psychic whip.
See, that brings her into the undiscussed group of those who like that kind of things. But we won't even start that now. That's just dangerous. That's just downright.
That's all right. I mean, the guy who created Wonder Woman was into that kind of thing. But that's another story for another time.
That's not the focus of our conversation. We can talk about Wonder Woman later.
Oh, believe me, we will when the movie comes out. But that's, like I said, that's another story for another time.
Yeah, so, that's a movie I don't think we should cover, but I'm not going to go there. All right, be on target, be on fact. Okay, so we've talked about the beauty of the movie and how it looked, and we've talked about the underwhelming performances by the female characters based upon the director's desire, as well as what they feel that young men would like to see, and who are the bulk of the movie's fans, as well as, let's see.
Well, I wouldn't call Mystique's performance, I forget the girl who played her, but I wouldn't have called her performance underwhelming.
Jennifer
Lawrence? No.
There you go.
Oh.
Or for Yuki, you can just call her Catnip.
Katniss. Oh, yeah, that's right. She's the girl who played Katniss in the Hunger Games movies. And to me, okay, she didn't do a terrible job. However, there were some times where she just did not. She did a good job with most of what she was given. There were times where that she did look like she was just, not into it.
There were plenty of scenes where she looked like she just didn't want to be there. Yeah. Catnip. Sorry.
Well, then again, I mean, she started off with this role, before she got any real big breakout, as Katniss.
Actually, not true. The movies came along at the same time, but not here nor there. And also, you have to remember, this is a woman who has, at a very early age, like Marissa Tomei, an Oscar on her mantle at home already, and she's not even 25. She's already reached the pinnacle of her industry and gotten its highest award. Now she has to find other ways to continuously recreate herself for potentially the next 40 years. So some of her performances are going to be judged based upon her overall. At the same time, some of her performances are going to be judged based upon kind of who she should be and who she could be. So there are variables here. They're variables for this actress. And yeah, you're right. But I think that her lines, her overall creativity was sensitive enough to emote why the character Mystique becomes who she does within the comic book.
Well, in the movie, I mean, this really could have been her chance to shine because okay, Mystique, she becomes like a hero in to the mutant community in this movie, and then she even becomes something of a something not a Robin Hood, but I don't know, like how Schindler's List work. She goes to places where the relations between humans and mutants are not all that good, and rescue mutants from being abused, and helps them to get out of the country or get to a safer place. And that really could have worked out a lot better than it really turned out to be. I mean, it was presented clearly, but it just didn't feel like it had any pull. I mean, even when you were dealing with some of the Morlocks, because that was Caliban, and Caliban's mutant power is to be able to find other mutants, or at least he looks at a mutant and knows everything about them. There was an opportunity they could have used to expand on some things. Yeah, they bring in Psylocke, but like I said, she's like, it feels like a throwaway character. And then, like we were just saying, her performance as Mystique, ranged from decent to wow, you're just kind of phoning it in, aren't you? and so, I mean, that was kind of a disappointment.
Well, that comes with the territory of the character, and that comes with the territory of storytelling. And I felt a little bit more. Here comes a surprise for you, and I want you to recognize this. This is a movie that I walked out of.
Seriously, you walked out of it? That's how much you hated it?
I didn't hate it. I was just fed up, and I walked out. And I hung with it all the way through the third act. I hung in there, but I walked out. And that says a lot for me in a Marvel-based or even a comic book movie.
Dude, if I ever walked out of a movie, that would have been a sign that I just hated it, or at least was just horrendously disappointed in it. I mean, and I didn't walk out of The Last Airbender, and The Last Airbender was god awful.
Now, hang on. I've already told you all the good things about this movie, that I enjoyed the visuals. I like some of the acting. I understand the muting of the characters in certain areas. I've also explained to you that I felt that it was displayed as best it could be. What's the important question for you?
Why did you walk out of the theater?
Whoa! You actually can ask a question. It's a simple one. And here, not to jab at you, it's a simple one. And this falls back to our conversation from last week. The only way that better film, better action movies, better comic book movies will occur is if we demand it and insist upon it. And I think I'm at a point where I'm probably going to watch Marvel's Doctor Strange, and I'm probably going to watch Black Panther. But there's no way I'm going to run to the theater repeatedly to continue to be let down with flat storytelling based around nothing but images. And I've already gotten that in my lifetime. I've already fulfilled that goal. I've read every comic book up to a certain point in the original X-Men run. I mean, think about it. Not only have I owned X-Men #1 through, I think, 212 in the original run. I mean, physically in paper owned. At one time in my life. I also currently have them all digitally in the first original run, and I can go back and look at any time and I've been more impressed by the serialized, repetitive writing within the comic, not the dialogue, not the storytelling, but other items around it that have kept me being a fan and a viewer of the comic book. But bringing those certain elements to the movie, dude, okay, I'm going to tell you at what point I walked out of the movie. I'm not going to tell you that you're my father. I'm going to hold that piece of information back from you. I've been brought here by our hero, the person who is our Martin Luther King, in the form of Mystique. And I'm going to go help my friends. and he walks away from him.
Oh, the Quicksilver's reticence to basically say, I'm your son is, I really didn't quite get that. I mean,
the reverse Darth Vader is what that was. I'm not going to tell you you're my father. How crappy writing. But anyway, where Apocalypse and Charles are in the mind battle, the beautiful scene in the mansion where Apocalypse grows larger and holds him to the ground and chases him down and beats the crap out of him, which is really good imagery and working really well. And I'm like, okay, we're getting where we're going. This is going to be fantastic. And we're going to see this wonderful, beautiful thing. And he rips the face of the building off the wall, and he doesn't kill anybody. I gotta be honest. I stood up and went, fuck this shit. I gotta go.
Wait. Ripped the face of the building off the wall but didn't kill anyone. I'm not following you.
Well, remember, Apocalypse pulls the face off the building to expose them, shielding Charles Xavier behind the wall, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And instead of, he does a syndrome. He starts monologuing.
Well, of course, he's a villain.
Yeah, that's okay. But he's a villain that goes, he just spent the last 10 minutes punching Charles Xavier around like a 12-year-old little girl. And I'm sorry if I keep coming back to little girl. And the reason I keep coming back to little girl is because I look at vulnerable as being a little girl. And maybe that's a little sexist and ageist of me, but I do. And so I'm going to keep saying it. You don't like it? Write him something and tell him about it on the Nameless Nerds website and the YouTube channel, which you can find. And if you don't know what the link is, we'll give it to you. But that's not the point. The point is, you have this character who's been kicking Charles Xavier around and slapping him around like the crippled invalid that he is, even in his own mind. And then he pulls the face off a building and he stands there and he monologues instead of just going
now
to anybody. He could have took a tertiary character and just went, okay, you're done. Well, and I would have sat down and stayed watching the movie.
Well, the thing is that Apocalypse at that particular moment also was a little preoccupied. Oh,
I'm too preoccupied to crush somebody like I've done the entire film. Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
He was preoccupied. I mean, I'm trying to remember. It's been a few days. It's been about 2 weeks since I've seen the movie. I'm just trying to remember. I know that a lot of things were going on in that scene. And I don't remember if that was the point where Magneto had started turning on Apocalypse, or if Apocalypse...
It was at the very beginning of that portion of the movie. Because when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I saw that starting to unfold, and I was like, I knew this was going to happen. I could write the rest of this.
If it's after during the point in time where he's fighting Professor X in his head, then that was the after they got Professor X out of that weird temple thing that he made. So. I think that, like I said, that when Professor X went and did that battle inside of Apocalypse's head, there was a lot of things going on, several different battles going on, and then Apocalypse, like I said, being distracted by the battle that was going on in his own head. So you could say, as a defense, that he didn't, that he was preoccupied. Now, since you didn't stay and watch the whole thing and see how it ended and how it ended up.
You want to know how it ended? Come on.
Don't just say "come on." Tell me what.
Okay. At the end, the Cookie Monster got a cookie and went, "Cookie good." How do you think it ended? They admonished Apocalypse and put him back to sleep.
Yeah, but no, actually, they didn't.
Okay, they A, killed him, B, put him back to sleep, C, moved him off the planet through magnetic force, D, trapped him in his mind. It doesn't matter to me which one. And you can't spoil this for me because there are only so many choices. And then, of course, Jean Grey probably at some point turns into the Phoenix and goes, I'm going to knock you down. Mama said knock you out. Okay, and got that out of the way. Charles then wakes up and goes, Hold on, Gene, while I embellish your powers so we can vanquish him together. Come on, man. This is not rocket science.
Well, I didn't tell you. I didn't say that it would be any big spoiler for you. I'm just saying that you left. You didn't know exactly what happened. So
What do you mean? Oh, okay. At the drive-through. That's what I'll say next. Okay. After they get through that, and uncharacteristically, they're smiling after an intense battle and people have died. And they're glad handing one another and hugging and being friends and just lovey dovey and wonderful. Magneto will slink away and be slightly invisible or get imprisoned shortly and then break out. Scott Summers will realize that he loves Jean and Jean loves him, and that's the beginning of their romance. Professor Xavier will remind them that we're now X-Men and we're all one together. Mystique will come in out of the cold for a little bit and be an apologist to having taken such a hard task to mutants and human relations, and then she'll slink off to her area. And then we're left with Charles Xavier and Moira McTaggart going, I love you, but it has to be at a distance because my mind power is too much for your sexual being.
not exactly.
Come on. It ain't much different.
Actually, it's quite a bit different from that.
Come on.
Don't come on me. You're the one who didn't stay.
I'm not the one who didn't stay. I'm the one who's brave enough to walk out.
Brave enough to walk out. I didn't find the movie that prosaic, I guess the word would be, at the end to walk out. I actually felt the whole thing kind of kept my interest. Now, the whole deal is this. I understand it's a comic book movie, so certain elements of it, even the ending, may be somewhat formulaic. So that, that's not something that really, really bugs me.
Well, come on, man. Here, the only way to get better film representation from Hollywood is to not put up with these drag you through the mud, crappy third and fourth acts where you're looking and oh God, the epilogues. Get out of Dodge. How long can you cliffhang me?
They didn't cliffhang anything with the epilogue in this one.
Well, watch this. I don't care. That's how I'm fighting two arguments here within myself. I'm a fan of the process and the product, and I'm a fan of film.
I'm just saying is that beyond. I think you need.
But I'm tired of watching. I'm tired of watching movies that give you this wonderful, beautiful build up with this potentially wonderful tragic ending that is going to really transform you and allow you to leave the theater thinking about mankind's position and everything and how we
tired of that
reflect prejudice upon one another, and then in the third and fourth act just fall completely apart.
Oh, unfortunately with this movie, I don't know. I don't think that it fell apart in the third act. Not really, no. So the problem with the movie was, it was little things. That's the way I see it. One thing that when I was on my friend's show, one thing we discussed was how the script, had some seriously lazy moments, and that was the.
Whoa! You're talking about that dialogue had lazy moments?
No, not just the. I'm sorry, not just the script. The plot.
The screenplay. You mean the screenplay?
Thank you. The screenplay had some moments of very lazy writing, to the point where you look at what was going on, and though you may not hit your head, may not hit your brain immediately. You go back and look at it and you're like, wait a minute, why on earth did they do that?
The screenplay had lazy writing? Okay. Let's see where that occurred at. Let's see, Apocalypse.
Well, for one thing,
the origin of Apocalypse is not revealed, but how Apocalypse becomes self-healing is revealed, and why he's been dormant for so long and where he's been is revealed. And then we get to the Munich circus, and then it starts to fall apart in the screenplay, and then it picks up again at the end of the second act, beginning of the third act. But you gotta realize, from my perspective, Magneto, such a tragic story. Let's make him the angry nerd in this conversation.
The thing with Magneto,
come on, dude. How melodramatic.
At the very beginning of the movie, when you saw the Magneto situation, well, you kind of saw what was going to happen from a mile away.
Well, here, I did not anticipate it going wrong so quickly and so early in the process, but I was anticipating it. On the flip side of the equation, but just making him that crestfallen, heartbroken parent.
Well,
and this is the source of his anger.
It wasn't just that, man. It's that what combined with a lifetime of being hated and feared.
Well, according to the story, he brought that on himself.
Regardless of whether he brought it on himself or not, it was still a lot of things that happened. Oh, and no, he didn't bring the death of his mother by a petty and cruel man just to activate his powers on himself. So not everything was just stuff that he brought on himself. This think about it. I mean, in the first movie, he just can't, he does turn away from Professor X. In the second movie, you find him in a prison underneath the Pentagon, and because he tried to save John F. Kennedy's life, because in the thing John F. Kennedy was supposedly a mutant. And and this is like the thanks he gets, and then so he gets pissed off and tries to use the Sentinels to take over the world. And then after being thwarted with that, he finally just throws in the towel, goes off to Eastern Europe, the middle of nowhere.
Now, see, watch this. Even though you're telling it in the order of the movies, you have the story out of sequence.
What?
Even though you're telling it in the order of the movies, you have the story out of sequence. The events in X-Men First Class, the movie after that, and the current movie all occur before him, well, with the exception of the events of Apocalypse. A lot of these things that we're talking about Magneto on film occur out of sequence, and we are catching the information through an edited backstory, which is okay.
Nothing that I mentioned is out of sequence.
Okay, when did John F. Kennedy get shot?
Dang it. What was it?
1960.
Say 5?
3 or 4 in Dallas? Got shot in 63 in Dallas.
Oh, 63. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And the X-Men Days of Future Past takes place in 1973.
Okay. Under the Nixon administration. So Magneto was already a villain when we get to 1973. So when we get to 1983, 83, he's on a different trajectory in his life. Those events still occur before the first X-Men movie.
Yeah, Magneto kind of, after the whole issue with the Sentinels and everything like that, he kind of threw in the towel and realized, that maybe, there is another way to live. So he goes off to parts unknown, starts a family, and tries to live his life in peace. And then what happens? The whole deal after that steel mill incident, discrimination rears its ugly head, and because a trigger-happy cop, which is really kind of funny, because when you look at that was one of the other weird things, kind of lazy things about the screenplay. Where did this cop get a bow and arrow? And where do you have training to use a bow and arrow? And a bow and arrow would not go through two people unless the string on that bow was made of metal.
Well, also let me bring a little thing around to you so that you understand. Have you ever used a bow and arrow? Have you ever used a simple bow?
No, I have not.
All right, I'm in a position where I have, and I'm going to share information with you. the representation of the bow and arrow in the film was very incorrect. You could not get that tension strength on that type of bow at that distance. It was there as a prop mainly to specify what may or could or has occurred, and it was just simply in front of you. That's all. In order to get that level of tension on a natural bow,
You had to use a crossbow.
no, you actually have to get flexible, very very flexible wood. Alder is a good place to go, and your string has to be made of twined, braided like a rope, double horsehair, in order to even get close to that. Even to get close to that, to penetrate more than 6 inches.
You see, I've never seen a bow and arrow go any further into a deer than maybe kind of halfway.
Okay, we're discussing a couple of different factors. We're discussing a movie prop versus reality, and I'm trying to clarify the movie prop and what would it take in a natural stance to get there. And then I'm going to explain to you why in the Soviet Union someone would have a bow and arrow, because bullets cost money at a time when you couldn't buy bullets in the Soviet Union unless you were a policeman. And they explained it away neatly for you by explaining that we took everything metal off of us so that you couldn't do anything to us.
And this is one of the moments where I'm both kind of glad and frustrated that they did not use Magneto's powers as they were in the comics, because in the comics, Magneto can just lock onto the iron of your blood,
But he also was able to do that in the movie. But
they had to.
We're going to leave it. We're going to leave that over there. We're going to leave that over there. We're talking about a specific segment in the movie that endears us to the character, that helps us understand his pain, and it also helps us understand where he's coming from with that deep-seated anger of a parent thwarted. Yeah, so what?
So what? Dude, think about it. This guy's just had misery on misery piled up on him, so he kind of was lashing out.
You just explained my criminal activities are around the fact that I've had a miserable childhood.
Yeah, I'm not saying that makes it an excuse. I'm just saying is that he has a motivation.
So did many other Jews at the end of World War II who spent time in German concentration camps.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure
when they were able. Hey, I'm talking. When they were able to get beyond that and migrate to other places, including forming Israel, they didn't go there and become stick-up men. They didn't go there and become mass murderers. They tried to rebuild their lives and move forward. And I think that making Magneto a Jewish character and making that part of his angst and his anger and fueling his hatred is a little bit uncharacteristic. It's kind of like saying that T'Challa, the Black Panther, is angry because his country's being overran by white people. Those two things just don't really make sense, and it sends a bad vibe about that issue. And in the movies, making that a big part of Magneto's makeup and going, he's the angry Jew. That's not really kind, nice, or smart. Now you can speak.
Thank you. First of all, yeah, the Jews didn't have superpowers. Okay. Secondly, Magneto, because he
You said Jews don't have superpowers. That's funny. I'm sorry.
I don't understand what's so funny, but
you don't get the joke in that.
I kind of do, and I don't.
That is what you said, right?
Yeah, I said the Jews didn't have superpowers.
Neither do white people. Neither do white people.
But you're not getting what I'm trying to say. Is that after the events of the Holocaust, do you honestly think that the Jews would have stood still for what had gone on if they did find out they had superpowers? Of course not. Now,
what do you know about Judaism?
Hold on, I'm not done. I'm also adding to the fact that, like I said, Magneto is a man who's gone, through a lot of pain and disappointment in his life, and not only that, but he's been used and abused as well. I mean, as a young boy in the concentration camp, saw what Sebastian Shaw did to him. Treated him like a tool, and so and then of course everything else that's been happening since that point, and then just the cherry on the top of the crap ice cream cone, having his only daughter, taken away from him by people who were just a little paranoid.
Hey, pardon me. I am interrupting you, and I want to slow you down for a moment. Let's cover something that's not in the movies, and let's be really fair. And I kind of want to step back from the edge of the abyss before I throw you into it and get a running start. Stating that in the real world that no one has superpowers is very correct. And then moving into the world of fantasy, and specifically the Marvel Universe, and looking at the backgrounds of the characters, we have been fed, and when I say we, I mean all of society that has a penchant for reading comic books and graphic novels and animated film, etc., and movies that come from that ilk. When you recognize that there is a direct correlation between who gets superpowers that make them good and those who get superpowers that make them bad, there is never what is called a normal person that becomes bad. They always seem to have some type of other exploited heritage, as they are seen as the villain. For a long time, it was the Russian. Then it was the German. Then it was the Japanese. Then for a while they couldn't make black people in Africa or anywhere else in the world the villain, because on TV, black people were always the villain. And so then they started making Irish villains and then Dutch villains and all these cockamamie background structures. In the real world scheme of things, bad people come in all varieties and good people come in all varieties. Why is it that in 2012, 2014, 2016, and 2020, there is this consensus on to squeeze us into seeing the good guy as the white billionaire, the white nice guy? Why does that exist?
I think that it would be a mistake to say that there's some sort of consensus on that, and well, quite frankly,
prove me wrong.
Well, I don't know. Well, let me see. Nothing's coming to mind right now.
Yeah, because you can't. Outside of Black Panther
and
the Falcon.
You just put words in my mouth.
Yes, I did, and I'll put more in if you don't say something.
I'm trying to approach this from a thoughtful manner, so give me a second. Now,
you have a thought?
Yeah. Anyway, I'm trying to say is that nothing comes to mind where I'm saying, the good guy is just this rich person. I mean, I'm not saying that that's never happened because right now I'm kind of just drawing a blank for some weird reason. But
and watch this. That was a surprise. And you're right. It was a surprise. But kind of step back and really look at that from a wider perspective of what we're being visited upon us as positive characters of all backgrounds.
Professor X in X-Men is depicted as a man of means because you needed somebody who would have the money and the means to make this school and to have all the things that the school needed and such. So
and watch this. I concur with that story device or that plot device to make that be true. But I'm looking at the wider scope across all the fantasy fiction movies across the board. It is so often that when the villain is an Earthling. They're something other than just a normal these are American movies, so they're different from being just a guy from Denver.
I don't know about that. For instance, in Pacific Rim, the main characters were normal guys. They were just military trained. That's all.
But watch this. I'm trying to work within that Marvel DC fantasy
Okay,
film
in the framework
structure.
of Marvel and DC movies, let me see here.
And here, those are the big. There are 30 movies coming out. There at least a minimum of 30 movies coming out over the next 4 years, from January 2016 through 2020, that are
Well,
going to be in that vein.
one superhero comes to mind already: Spider-Man. He's just a kid from the streets of New York. There's nothing really
Okay,
special about him.
now watch this. The Spider-Man that we're being given is not the new Spider-Man. Who, if you go to the store and pick up the latest copy of the Amazing Spider-Man, the character that we're being fed is not the character that we're seeing on screen. Why is that distinction being made?
Oh, that's just because Marvel always tries to reinvent the wheel every so often.
But here, there's such a large push on for us to at least come close to what we've been given in the comics. But yet this was a partial oversight. Now don't get me wrong. I am a Peter Parker fan. I am a Peter Parker fan, up and down. But why, if I go to the store, if I get up from my desk right now and walk into the comic store and ask for the latest version of Amazing Spider-Man, who is the alter ego of Spider-Man?
I don't know. I haven't really been reading Spider-Man lately.
All right, see, you don't prep for your own show.
No, I'm not a Spider-Man person. I haven't. The comics
You
that I
watch
read,
Tobey Maguire be Spider-Man?
hey, I like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Come on, you like your Spider-Man vegan?
That had nothing to do with the character in the movie.
Let me get back on track. Here, I openly admit I had to look it up because I don't currently read Spider-Man. But the current Spider-Man is Miles Morales.
Oh yeah, him.
What do you mean? Oh yeah, him.
I was like, oh yeah, him.
You mean you knew,
I'd forgotten the name.
but you knew.
Yeah, but I was drawing a blank at the moment.
Don't worry, I understand. It's just the way you think. At the same time, how come we didn't get Miles Morales in the movie?
I don't know. That's just the way that the decision went. I was not there when they started going into talks about who the Spider-Man character was going to be.
And don't get me wrong, if I would have been part of the conversation in 2012 when this movie was being formed and the story was coming around about putting Spider-Man into Civil War, it's part of the conversation I would have had. Yes, you're familiar with Miles Morales in the comic books, but we want to exploit Peter Parker a little bit further. I would have said and listened to that. We're going to have a Peter Parker movie. We're going to pass the torch at some point in the film structure to Miles Morales further down the road, probably after 2021. And we'll rediscuss it at that time and we'll come back around to it. I would have given a nod to yes, but I'm asking the bigger question here. And there are two questions in front of you. And let me be calm and state them. In Marvel and DC Universe movies portrayed on film, if you are quote unquote the good guy or going to be the good guy, you are presented as American and white. If you're the villain, there's something else going on. You're European, you're Japanese, you're Chinese, you're assumed to be Mandarin, which is a language, not a group. You are French, as in Batroc de Libre. You are Dutch, or you're something else. But you just can't be a good guy and be the good guy who is Japanese American, Korean American, Vietnamese American, Indian, Native American, East Indian American. You can't be any of those things and start out being the star and the good guy.
I
Why
think you
is
know. I think you know the reason for that.
no? I'm asking why can't you? It doesn't. I'm not talking about what I know. I'm I'm putting a question in front of the public to begin to let them know and begin to understand part of the reason why I got up and walked out of a film which I've anticipated for 25 years and a good story that I've probably anticipated for the last decade. What made me get up and walk out of the film? Because in watching it on the screen and being entertained by it and really digging it to a certain aspect and being thrilled and entertained, I got to a certain point where I went, I gotta bounce. And for me to get up and walk out of that type of movie and say I gotta bounce, that says a lot. I like sitting in movie theaters. I like watching the screen. I like seeing things come to life. I
Well,
know production value. Go for it. What do you want to say?
well, if you know, you had already said why. I mean, you said that you felt that it was just, you felt like to not paraphrase, but the way I see what you're saying is that you felt like the plot was pretty much just on a very predictable rail, and you also said that some things had happened that you were just very turned off by. So
As J.C. Henry, who's in the chat room, says that you're supposed to not identify with the villain. I understand not identifying with the villain. So you're telling me that by not identifying with the villain, that I am being encouraged to identify with the quote unquote Tony Stark. I'm being suggested to identify with the Professor Xavier. If I had a 27-acre campus or how many other acres he's got, trust me, this wouldn't be an issue for me, and I would be a Republican.
and also the and also Magneto is a very identifiable villain. How many of us have and especially being black, some of us have had to suffer discrimination and and bigotry. So you can sympathize with Magneto. You felt you almost felt you could understand why he was looking for the you felt his righteous indignation and such things. So you can sympathize with a villain but like I was saying, going back to what we were saying, TC, sorry, the
Yeah, I know you are, but keep going.
anyway, what we're going back on is just, how do we put it, a movie that just kind of, I think, dropped the ball for you. And and I have to admit, it did drop the ball on a lot of things, which is the reason why it's nowhere near as good as Days of Future Past was or X2 was. It wasn't terrible. I mean, it sure as hell wasn't. It sure as hell wasn't. You know, Batman versus Superman levels of dropping the ball, but it did drop the ball nonetheless.
Hey, on a serious note, we've been at it for exactly 62 minutes. I need a short break, and this is a call I really need to take. I'm going to make it really brief. Okay.
All right.
I'm back. I'm back. I'm back.
All right, excellent.
Watch this, man. We're making such big waves, man. That was a call from a friend of mine who works for a production company, and he was like, "Quit bashing the X-Men. It made like millions of dollars."
Well, we're to your friend. We're not bashing the X-Men. We're just kind of taking it to that.
That was a straight comment directly to me. It wasn't about us. It was directly to me, and it was a little bit of a reminder. You know, being a critic and a reviewer is one thing, but you might be biting a hand that could feed you.
Well, in the end of the day, I much prefer honesty and integrity over just anyone's gonna be
No, you
feeding.
don't. You sat through the whole movie.
Yes, and integrity. I am a movie watcher with integrity. I've never walked out of the theater any movie I've seen, no matter how crappy. And like I said, I hated Last Airbender, but I stayed all the way to the end. And I plan on going to see, for instance, I'm planning on going to see the new Ghostbusters movie, and even that movie.
Stop talking.
Sucks like a
The Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
Come on, man. What are you gonna do? Kidnap a Girl Scout to go with you?
Anyway, as I was saying, I plan on watching it, and even if it sucks like a Hoover, I'm going to sit through it.
See, I'm here
because I want to have an informed opinion.
Here, the first movie sucked. The first Ghostbusters movie was good, but it sucked. Looking at it in hindsight, it's classic.
Tongue, sir.
Hang on. Looking at it in hindsight, it's high comedy. It's great fun. It's really cool. But as a film,
the movie, the Ghostbusters movie is awesome, but that's way off topic. So let's get back to X-Men Apocalypse.
Let's finish beating up Ghostbusters while we at it.
No, we really want to keep the show on focus here. We can bust Ghostbusters. We can bust Ghostbusters when the movie.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you.
I already said it.
On the serious sense of Ghostbusters, though, I like the fact that they're going to use some of the imagery from the animated version of it. That's one thing I'm pleased with, because I felt that the animated version had more depth to it.
Well, yeah, J. Michael Straczynski did some of the script writing for it, so it's definitely going to have some depth.
Get out with your bad self. You're up to date on some information. Boy, you never fail to impress me.
So, anyway, back to the X-Men.
Okay, what else more can we really say about this?
Well, like I said, I mean, I'm trying to think if there was anything else that really, really stood out for me. Oh, you were saying that that Quicksilver didn't steal the show. I mean, I'm sorry. When he goes in and rescues all the kids in the X-Mansion before everything gets blown up, except for some reason Havoc. I mean, seriously, what on earth happened there?
I have a response to that.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of talking about this yesterday with another writer. Do you understand your Xavier School for the Gifted, not anatomy, blueprint? Do you understand it?
The
blueprint for the school, for the house.
No, I remember there was something that was released to that, though I never read it.
Here, I'm a long-time reader, as we've already discussed multiple times before, and I know the blueprint of the house. The coming out of Cerebro, straight ahead of you is the danger room.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to just cockamamie nerd fact. It is not where the X-Wing is kept. The X-Wing is kept at a lower level. So for him to unleash his power and blow up the X-Wing, for those of us who are old fuddy-duddies, we knew that was a plot point for the story. And also to do away with Havoc in that manner leaves holes in other areas of the story. But I don't want to admonish them for that. In the path of the storytelling, and remove that scene where he saves everyone from the mansion, and review the movie as a general whole, based upon the fact of X-Men Days of Future Past, at what point would you have brought Quicksilver, knowing his skill set, into the current movie?
At what point would I have brought Quicksilver, knowing his current skill set? What?
Put your writer's hat on for a second and look at the story as a whole. Already knowing what his ability is from Days of Future Past, pulling that scene out and saying that it does not explode, at what point would you have interjected him into the movie?
Probably not too long after he leaves home, if he can move that fast.
No, but I mean, you're the writer. You control this. Where would you have brought him into that movie? Period.
I didn't have a problem with where he was at the time. I mean,
okay, writer, science writer. Put your writing hat on, not your fan hat, and you have control of where he enters the story.
The problem is you're asking me to think of something better when I really had no problems with what was given. That I wouldn't think of a better idea if I didn't, if I thought that the idea they had was already good.
Okay, it's the adult's turn. In the sequencing of the movie and all of what I saw, introducing him into the scene because the house is exploding works really well, but it's a completely contrived scene to bring him into the story at that point. It is. Other points of the story where he could have been brought in that would have been plausible was Mystique would have went to have seen him, and he would have transported her to Kurt Wagner. That would have been an opportunity to show off his speed.
But he wasn't working in the Mutant Underground.
Okay. I'm telling you from a writer's hat perspective, where else you could have brought him into the movie. The Mutant Underground didn't exist until you were told about it. So to say that he was or was not working in it doesn't fit. I'm trying to point out to you that the entire scene of the house blowing up was a contrived activity to introduce him into the scene.
And I'm sorry, I disagree. I don't think it was contrived at all. I think that was a perfect place to bring him in. I thought that they did a great job with him, with that moment, because, he came in and rescued him at a very what could have been a very tragic moment. He already had, said, I'm going to go and meet him. And his first intended stop was the home for the gifted, because he knew about Professor X. And so he arrives there and then goes in and finds out everything's about to blow to Kingdom Come. So he rescues everyone. It didn't feel contrived at all to me.
You've just explained what contrived looks like.
No, because you're basically thinking that, this was just way too
convenient.
Yeah, and I don't think it was way too convenient at all. It worked. It was a great point to put him into the plot, because it gave him a chance to to be there at a critical moment, show off his powers, and do what he does.
I agree, and I'm telling you that if you were to remove that particular confluence of activity in the storytelling from it, where else would you have fit him in? And those are the examples which I'm giving you.
I'm sorry, I just don't see.
You don't see a good reason why, too, right? It doesn't make any sense to have an imagination.
In my head, it doesn't make sense to have him as part of Mutant Underground. I mean, okay, you could have him in there, but you'd kind of be wondering, how did he get from this point to working in the Mutant Underground with Mystique?
If you go back to the other movie, ta-da!
In the other movie, he was always, when he's not, using his super speed, he's a real laid back guy.
He's vegging on his couch and playing Miss Pac-Man and hanging out and watching TV and moving around his basement really fast.
Yeah, he's a person with aspirations that aren't very high. So
what a more perfect person than to get to help you go great distances quickly, who has the speed on your side. But hang on, there are other places where he could have been introduced into the story. That's what I'm saying to you. I'm not disputing that it wasn't a show stealer. I'm not debating that it wasn't a good scene. I'm not saying that it was bad writing or bad placement. I'm trying to see how else within the writing realm would you improve that? Where could he have? Where could the actor's skills be better benefited than being just an action sequence? Where could the actor have shined, not the character? Where
And
could the actor have shined as the character?
and I understand that. It's
Yeah,
just
but you're still fighting me like hell.
no, I'm not fighting you. It's just in
Put a love, put a love.
in this case, I really couldn't have thought of something better. There are times where I'll watch a movie, and if I feel that something feels contrived, like you felt, or felt that the person was a particular element of the plot or characterization was just done wrongly, I can often come up and say, well, I could have done a better job putting this person, and I would have done this, and this. If I was a writer. In the case of a Quicksilver, because you and I look at this completely differently. Yeah, you are doing the I could have done this better, and here's how. Point. Whereas I just looking at it, I was like, I'm perfectly comfortable with where they had it right there.
I'm not even saying better. I'm suggesting different. That would have showcased the actor more so than the character's ability.
Translation better.
Okay.
So, and like I said, okay, you obviously didn't particularly care much for Quicksilver's part in this movie or how he was brought.
No. I actually liked the scene. It was fun. It fit the mold. It was a gentle comic relief during a very stressful period of the movie.
Now,
for younger people, it would make them feel a little sigh of relief to know that everyone was saved and to watch the events unfold. And yes, just like Bambi's father, somebody's got to go.
Wow. The only thing, now I will say this, the only thing I did not like about that scene was the choice of song. Everybody loved the use of Sweet Dreams. I did not. I liked the use of Time in a Bottle back in Days of Future Past. But when they did that whole, high speed, through Quicksilver's eyes thing, and they were playing Sweet Dreams, I'm like, why Sweet Dreams? I'm trying to think of another 80s song that probably would have worked better.
Would you like an example?
Freeze Frame by the Jay Giles Band probably would have worked better. But then again, I think that came out after 1983.
Doesn't matter when. Time in a Bottle came out when? Jim Croce,
I don't know that one.
Jim Croce, 1972.
Well, Days of Future Past came out in was supposed to be taking place in 1973.
I understand. If I had to substitute a song for Sweet Dreams, which I wasn't matching music at that point. I was like, yeah, here we go again. I was thinking more along the lines of Tainted Love, but that's okay. It had nothing to do with the activity or the action. But see, you do have a little bit of an imagination. Let it out more often. It's healthy.
Yeah, I'm looking at Billboard top hits in 1982 just to see if there was anything like right off the cuff that would have worked. Let me see. Chariots of Fire. The Chariots of Fire.
Because Chariots of Fire's done the slow motion. And
yes, literally perfect.
I would have went with Walk Like an Egyptian, but hey, that would have fit the movie in a different scene. But now, see, watch this. We're getting camp with this. Yeah. And you're de-escalating. And I just like when I get to rip your head off. It's so much more fun.
Yeah, I know, but I just wanted to go into that because that was, like I said, that was a nitpick that I particularly had, was the choice of song for that scene. And I'm like,
you can pick a song, but you can't pick a better point or a different point to insert this character.
Right, because I was totally cool.
Take the explosion out of the movie.
Now, if it was maybe given to me as some sort of a school assignment, but you kind of put me on the spot, I would have had to actually go home and think about it for a moment for a few minutes. I'm not going to sit here and mull over the thing for 2 silent minutes over the show.
I've seen you do worse. Now, we've beat this movie up. Bottom line it for me.
Bottom line, really enjoyed it. Had it really brought up the stakes. Pretty cool visual effects. Still suffers from some recurring problems of the X-Men franchise. Moments of really lazy script writing.
I didn't say the bottom 20 lines. Bottom line.
I still liked it. I think that people ought to go check it out. My score for it was originally a 7 out of 10, but after learning of the laziness of the script writing, it went down to a 6.5.
Screenplay, not script.
You know what I mean.
No, it's what you said. A script is dialogue. A screenplay is story. It's kind of important. Because here, let me honestly ask you, what was the dialogue problem for you here? Was there a dialogue problem?
Oscar Isaac, though he tried to really make a larger-than-life godlike villain, his lines, I don't know. I think it was partly his lines kind of made things kind of fall flat.
You could be a god. Here, just like in cop movies, there's certain phrases you gotta hear. Stop! I'll shoot! Don't make me kill you! Gotta have those lines in a dramatic cop movie. In a buddy cop movie funny, I'm tired of working with you. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to retire at the end of the movie, but I'll be back for the sequel.
And let's not forget the ever so popular, I'm getting too old for this.
There you go. So just as so in superhero-based movies, there's certain lines that either villains have to say or heroes have to say, and there has to be a better way.
I'm sorry, I've never been the kind of person that tries to go by, there has to be certain lines.
I'm saying that they are in nearly every last one.
I know.
Nearly in every last one.
And that's a pain in the behind to me.
This could have been done better. Why are you acting so poorly? There are a series of lines which need to be. From the standpoint of a comic movie and looking at 30 to 36 pages, even a 48-page giant size, and cell by cell, and going through them all, there's certain items which do reoccur. And there's something we have left out in this movie. We get some convenience in this telling of X-Men Apocalypse that we don't have to wait for the epilogue to encounter, which is that feel, touch, and reason that Wolverine is so drawn to Jean Grey. And we get a lot of explanation which has been given to us in other areas of other films. But I think that it's a convenient little drop-off for us to get that acknowledgement. And you never confirmed for me, and you don't need to, about various Jean Grey activities. And I don't need it. So my turn to bottom line this. See it, don't see it, wait on video. Those are the 3 choices.
Okay.
For the view. No.
See it.
For the view and the cinematography and all of the things that make a good action movie and a great comic book movie good, go see this movie in the theater. Get a discount ticket if you can. I don't think anybody's going to hate you about it. You are going to find wonderful things about the film and embrace them. But if you're looking for something on a deeper level in a comic book movie to fulfill that hope and need, this isn't it. My focus has now turned to Doctor Strange to fulfill that. And even with the hoopla surrounding it, I'm still hoping for a better film than what I got here. And that's my honest opinion.
There were some things that I did forget to talk about. And
Well, you should have talked about them before now, because I'm tired of talking about this movie. Let's talk about something else.
well, that's what today's show is supposed to be about. Is
Man, you're gonna make me talk to you for 120 minutes about this movie that I really walked out on? You got some nerve.
I'm not the one who walked out on it.
You should have.
No, I actually liked it. So,
Well, I wonder what you do with movies you kind of actually don't. But
and as I
okay,
said,
here. All right. Wait. Okay, let me engage you. What you got? What don't you think you didn't talk about?
that one scene where Stryker came out of nowhere, then they're brought to Alkali Lake, and they encounter Wolverine. This was all just so they could squeeze in Wolverine. That one little cameo.
But that fills in a major hole within the storytelling of the films. And I just said it.
Only just them getting that plane.
Okay.
All that just to get a plane.
Look into my eye. Okay, look into my eye. What do you see? I've already gone over this. I told you that it fills in the blank in the story of why he's so drawn to her. What else you want to talk about this movie? Come on with something I haven't covered.
Well,
you haven't covered.
Well,
Come on with something somebody wants to
hear. Since you walked out, Jean Grey, because at first she looked like she was so helpless and vulnerable. And that was one of the cool things about the movie, by the way, was how she did kind of build up a bit as a character during their entire, what was the word I'm looking for? What they had to endure at Alkali Lake, and them trying to go and rescue their friends, and then having to fight, against, Apocalypse, and then Jean Grey ended up becoming the Phoenix.
So I was right. I said that. I was like, at some point she had to do that in order to defeat Apocalypse. So I was right.
I never said that you were wrong.
No, wait. I was correct.
I was silent on it because, you're the one who walked out the movie theater.
But I also gave you a possible four actions in a row that should have occurred. And you were like,
Now, incidentally,
now you're like, oh, let me surprise you with this piece of information now. Yay!
Now, incidentally, I didn't think that was going to happen, personally. I didn't think they were going to bring up the whole thing about the Phoenix again, to be honest. Because they already did that with X2 and X3.
Why not?
Because it was done before, and I would hope that the writers would have thought of something different.
When you go back and review this episode, I want you to hear the part where I gave you the four possible activities that would have occurred after you pulled down the wall.
I was listening to you. I didn't say anything because as I said, you're the one who didn't stay to watch the movie.
Because I didn't need to. Because I'm a writer. And I'm an adult.
Too, but I still stayed.
And like you said, you couldn't see that happening. Boy, aren't you glad you're only looking in my eye?
You can show me your face if you want. It's not going to scare me. But
you don't want to see the indignation on my face.
I've looked at the indignation on the faces of my friends when we reviewed that movie before. And your indignation will be just as benign to me.
Well, that means that you're not learning anything yet. Let me continue to flog you.
But anyway, I'm just saying is that with the whole deal, the whole deal of Jean Grey growing as a character, and my friends didn't. They were saying, well, they should do the thing of the Phoenix saga again in the next movie, and I'm like, no, they shouldn't. They already did that. It was like, well, they brought out the Phoenix. They're kind of obligated to him. Like, says who? And of course the after credits thing, which you didn't see.
Don't care. Tell me about it. Go ahead. Let everybody else know.
Well, I'm just going to say is that they do reveal a name, Essex.
Essex?
Yes, Essex. You know who he is, right?
No, tell us.
Nathaniel Essex.
Tell us more.
Mr. Sinister.
Tell us more.
Well, Mr. Sinister isn't that high up on the isn't as high on the threat level, but he's still a pretty difficult foe to contend with, simply because he's does everything kind of in the shadows. So it's kind of making me wonder what they're going to do with the X-Men franchise. Some have said that this should be the last X-Men movie, and then have them just go on ahead into the New Mutants. Or and some said, well, they ought to go ahead and make another X-Men movie and have Mr. Sinister be the primary villain in that one. No one ever said that Apocalypse needs to be the be-all, end-all, but then again, Apocalypse, like I said, is the big bad for the X-Men, and so that made me kind of intrigued with the ending scene. Seeing that it seems to hint at Mr. Sinister, and like personally, I would like them to do another X-Men movie just because this one was kind of subpar. But
wait a minute, you just spent 90 minutes explaining to me how great it was, and I shouldn't have walked out of it. And now you're gonna beef up and go, it was subpar. Make up your mind. Stand on one side of the aisle or the other. Stand behind your words. Be a better critic.
Hey, I can be on both sides of the fence if I want to.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. No one ever said a critic has to either love or hate a movie.
That's true, but you can't be wishy-washy at the same time.
I said I liked it. I never said that it was perfect.
Get out of jail free cards are only in Monopoly.
That's okay. I have no worries about going to jail right now. Yeah, I'm just saying that the movie, and I had already said it, it's not without its flaws, but I enjoyed the living hell out of it, and like I said, at least it wasn't Batman versus Superman, which I kind of find myself liking less and less and less.
Oh, you mean like when I told you in the beginning that it was an okay movie, but it could have been done in an animated movie. The animated version of it was much better.
The animated version would have sucked too. So
no, the animated version has already occurred.
I've seen Superman versus Doomsday, but that one at least.
That's not the part of Batman Superman I'm talking about. I'm talking about the part of Batman Superman where it's Batman versus Superman, told in the Dark Knight.
Oh yeah, the one that's based off the Elseworlds comic.
No, it's based off of Frank Miller's Dark Knight.
That's even worse.
See,
yeah.
You're just this vapid person.
No, Frank Miller. Frank Miller was a brilliant comic book writer until he went crazy. Yeah, I see it. Let the facepalm flow over you.
Okay. At some point, we will discuss Frank Miller. We will discuss Bill Stankovich.
I'm not really the person. I'm not really the best person to talk to about Frank Miller, only because I've learned a lot about Frank Miller from watching videos of Linkara. I've read not 300. I've read Sin City, and a lot of what Linkara does, he actually does kind of narrate the comics, but he does it more in short order. And yeah, some of the stuff is really really bad. But we're looking at his latter stuff, not his current. Not his earlier stuff. Yeah, he was looking at his latter stuff, not his earlier stuff. His earlier stuff, I know, is claimed to be really, really good.
Are you familiar with Howard Chaykin? Spelled CH, not SH.
Am I familiar with it?
Are you familiar with Howard Chaykin?
I'm not.
He penned a mid-'80s comic for First Comics titled American Flag. It's available in your library in graphic novel form now. Frank Miller and Howard Chaykin are like two sides of the same coin, whereas you look at Frank Miller taking established older characters and giving them a new blush or a new view, and then going nuts. Look at Howard Chaykin as creating a new character and following a trend. And I think that you'll find Howard Chaykin a little bit more readable, far more political, and definitely more in the now. Whereas Frank Miller drifts, and I openly admit this. The storytelling from Frank Miller in comics, from Daredevil to post Batman, which includes a few other offshoots, is is a good review for you to take a look at, and it will give you some respect for Batman Superman. It will always it'll also begin to give you some respect for what's going to be portrayed in the Suicide Squad. And I think that'll help with reviewing it and really seeing it for what it is. I mean, no screaming, no yelling, no finger pointing, just things to contemplate. And I want to see you grow as a comic reader, and I want to see you grow as a writer, and I want you to begin to look at the wider scope. And it does become a spoiler at some point because you'll be sitting down watching a movie and one day it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. Why am I watching this garbage? And then you'll begin to select better film. It's not to say that they're not good movies or entertaining movies. It's just that at some point you're going to be able to write them in your sleep.
Well, I don't have a problem with my choices of movies or how I feel about movies. I always enjoy a movie for what it is and criticize it later. In the case, so, and that's
think about that. Well, I enjoy it now because I'm supposed to, because everyone else does, but I'll just tear it down later when no one else is looking.
No, I did not say that. I said
I put words in your mouth like I was supposed to.
Yeah, I said I enjoy it for what it is and then critique it later.
A statement that was pushed around while we were speaking about why Wolverine was in the film and the reason to give him a cameo. Hugh Jackman sells tickets.
Yeah. And by the way, going back to what you were saying about Ghostbusters, I plan on seeing the Ghostbusters movie. I recommend you do because I want to discuss it in our show. But that
I've already seen it
at a later point.
I've already seen it.
The new Ghostbusters movie?
Yeah, I've seen the previews.
No, I said the movie, not the previews.
I'm telling you, I've already seen it. I kid you not.
No, you don't get to make a judgment on the movie just by looking at a trailer. Sorry, yeah. I've seen crappy trailers that still were good movies.
Okay, what nuances don't you think that I already have about this movie?
I have no idea. I am not you.
No. I'm just trying to check. I'm telling you, I've already seen the movie from beginning to end. In the previews alone, the entire movie is contained in I think 12 minutes worth of previews.
Yeah, some trailers do that. They'll say what the movie is all about, but they don't. There's a lot of detail that's left out. How they come to the coda at the end, you know. So
you're really serious, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Okay, I really liked The Prince of Persia. It was going to be a damn good movie. They released a total of 8 minutes and 42 seconds of trailer over a period of 8 months. The entire movie is contained in the trailer.
No, it's not because I would have never figured out at the end that everything would have rewound back to the beginning.
You need to go back and watch all the trailers. I'm dead serious. And here, I'm not. This isn't about powers of observation or storytelling or any of those things. If you go back and pay close attention to all of the trailers and get them in one string, the entire movie is contained in 8 minutes and 42 seconds.
Okay.
The trailer shows you're dealing with a waif who becomes a favorite son, who gets a dagger, who falls in love with a girl, who's lost in a maze, who gets there, and once he gets there and all the sand comes out, he turns this knob and it undoes all the sand. You get all that. The one thing you don't get in the trailer is who his overall antagonist is, which is the Ben Kingsley character.
I do believe we found our topic for next week: video game movies. Are they good, or do they? Are there any that are good, or do they all?
Do they all blow chunks?
That's the question, and that's what I'd like to discuss.
Well, I could do that in 4 minutes.
Oh God, I don't know. I think what I can do is start talking about Uwe Boll, though you probably want me to stop talking about him after a certain point.
Watch it. To say his name in public and out loud is to conjure hatred amongst yourself, within yourself.
Oh, trust me, I already hate myself enough. Uwe Boll isn't really making that big of a difference.
Well, it's just here. I don't think the guy's bad. I don't think he's great. I think that a lot of people who
He sucks.
a lot of people who've never worked in film and what it takes to make a film have passed judgment on him, and it has become a public pastime to do so. But it's really hard to make a good movie. It's hard to get a good movie greenlit. If you want to have a real in-depth conversation about film and budgeting and what it takes to go from making a movie decent to making a movie good to making a movie great, I can almost assure you that if you were to have a award ceremony for the coolest movie, not the best, the coolest movie, it would be films that have never been given any type of Oscar.
Well, I'm sorry. Uwe Boll sucks horribly.
See, you're focusing on
He's also a terrible human being because he
Do you know him?
Because he exploited a loophole in German law just so that Germany could get movies made in the country. So, but the thing was that even if the movie turned out to be very bad, you could still make a profit off of your movie because of how the tax break worked.
I'd hire him too.
So what Boll
if profit is my goal, I'm hiring him.
So what Boll did was was purposely make really god awful movies just so he could make money off of them, even though they were just really bad movies.
So and you're saying the guy took full advantage of a capitalist society and system.
Yeah, and that's bad. Because a capitalist society that is a drawback to a capitalist society, and oh my God, we're going into economics. That is a drawback to a capitalist society. You being the person exploiting that particular loophole makes you a jerk, and
it makes you thrifty.
And no, it makes you a jerk because you're sitting there polluting. You're polluting a form of artistic expression with cheap, crappy knockoffs that or not knockoffs, but with cheap garbage that is cheap garbage that you pooped out.
Hang on.
And now here's the kicker.
I want to ask one question.
Well, hold on. Here's the kicker. The German government, if memory serves, finally fixed that law so that Boll couldn't make more movies, and so he started going to crowdfunding, but nobody wanted to support him. So he basically told the internet to go F themselves.
So what? Let me ask the question I was going to ask anyway. Pick a single film by Boll and make it the example.
Alone in the Dark.
Okay. Please pick another one.
No. You said a film.
Here, watch this. I watch a lot of film. I'm trying to recall something quickly. Please pick another.
God dang, what's that movie's name? Blood Rain.
Okay, Blood Rain. I've seen it. Not a great movie. Not a fun movie.
Terrible movie.
Not a great movie. Not a fun movie. I acknowledge this. Okay? Do you understand what it takes to get a film greenlit?
That not an excuse.
No, it's a question. Do you know what it takes?
Not everything about the process, no.
Oh, all right, and that's fair. And at some point in time, we will have this conversation overwhelmingly. Here, something that was brought to my attention yesterday: the film Fifth Wave. I've heard good things, okay things, and bad things about it at the same time. The best definition that I've heard that sums it up for me is it should have been a TV pilot.
And what was this movie again?
It's called The Fifth Wave.
Oh, Fifth Wave. Yeah, okay, I heard. Yeah, it went into the box office and went right back out.
So that's this year's Blood Rain, for lack of a better terminology. Big budget, big star, big capability, got lost in the mix. All right. It's this year's Pixels. Pixels, great story matter. Not necessarily horribly told, just it didn't resonate with fans. If
I never watched.
It would have been better.
I never watched Pixels, but I learned enough about the plot where I realized that movie would have been crap. And I was kind of disappointed because I was hoping that of all movies, Adam Sandler would have made that movie actually work, and he didn't.
We've come all the way full circle for me to ask a single question. You personally, would you spend $100 on one independent film or 10 independent films and give them $10 a piece?
Wait, would I spend $100 on?
Do you want me to ask the question again?
Yeah, I don't really understand what you're trying to get at.
You have one $100 bill, and you have that allotted to spend money on an independent film which you're going to help get made. Would you spend it on one film, or would you spend it on 10 films at $10 a piece?
One.
Okay. I accept your response. How many independent films have you funded?
One.
Okay.
Wait, you're talking about have I ever actually funded, or are you just saying based on what you just asked me?
How many independent films have you given money to?
Oh, no, I haven't given money to any. Well, wait. Unless you count you actually going to the movie, and so yeah.
I mean at the production phase.
No, I'm not a movie producer.
Okay, you don't have to be. As a movie fan, there is someone right now putting together a production that is low budget, low cost, lots of green screen, lots of chutzpah, lots of, get to it, lot of sweat equity, who would love to see your $100 bill in their account through Kickstarter, through whatever giving source they're asking for to make a better film. So instead of sitting around dragging our knuckles, arguing about bad film, good film, what's acceptable storytelling, what's better storytelling, and what's wrong with something, why don't we fund movies that make better sense, that turn out better productions? Why don't we do that?
Well, what I was trying to say about Uwe Boll is that, we do fund, and even crowdfund. Some movies can get crowdfunded. What Uwe Boll did, people had already seen him for, what he was,
I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about someone who you like, someone who you feel has a good product, a good story, good production values, the ability to make a good film. Why don't we, and I don't mean just you and I mean the public en masse, why is there not an effort to support those types of films instead of accepting what Hollywood continues to quite literally shit out?
Well, there is, but the effort isn't as big as it ought to be.
If 1,000 people gave $10 to a production, that makes it $10,000 to start running with. An independent film can be made for $70,000. A good independent film can be made for $110,000. An awesome independent film can be made with Hollywood named stars under $1 million. why don't we invest as a community in those things?
That's a good question.
Why don't we believe in the true art of making art?
Because too many people are complacent and are feeding off the McDonald's that of movies that is out right now.
If 1 million persons simply gave $10 to an independent film, that would be quite literally a $10 million film. The budget now is at 10 million. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. And your return on such an investment is so large and so giving that you're going to get better productions. You're going to get better storytelling, better writing.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily every time. But watch this. We accept what comes out anyway. We accept what shows up. So, no, every film can't be a 10 out of 10. Every film can't be an Academy Award performance. Every film can't be perfect. But when you increase the budget and the ability for the art to occur, I mean, this is the first time in film history in 104 years. No, actually longer than that, because film became big in 1913. You literally have the ability to make, for lack of a better term, a home movie better than what you see on the screen. I mean, look at the guy on the internet who does special effects where he runs and jumps in the car.
Oh, Freddie.
He hides behind the tree. That's a great
gimmick.
Wait.
The 3-second magic guy.
Yeah. That's a great gimmick and a wonderful expression. Think about the guys who spend their time cutting and editing together the, not sword fights, but the lightsaber fights, and they have a good time with them. Look at one of the best comedies on the internet that was made for free in a grocery store. Chad Vader. That is high comedy to me, and it's done so well. The writing is spot on. The visuals aren't where they could be, but the storytelling is spot on with Chad Vader. Look at the comedy of Ilsa. No, her name isn't Ilsa. Damn it. I'm sorry, pardon me. Awkward Black Girl. Issa Rae. I-S-A Rae. R-A-E. Look at her storytelling and the way that she delivers production after production after production without any oversight and great storytelling and spot on comedy. Her comedy ranks up there with what Larry David did with the Seinfeld show. So all these productions are in motion, and we do live at a time and an age where we don't have to accept what's delivered to us by individuals who can tell us they do it better. We don't have to. Demand.
Like I said, too many people don't want to, and that's a crying shame.
Well, no. They do it when we encourage them to do it. They encourage them to do it when we say do it. Here's a film which, man, I'm sorry, man. I'm drawing blanks in certain areas because I'm so impassioned about this idea, because 48-Hour Film Festival is getting ready to go. And I've kind of been tapped to join in. I chose to be here with you this evening instead of making a production meeting for it. There'll still be space for me, but I really could have lent my writing talents to it. And this is just the beginning of the cycle. We're not there yet. There are a lot of prep meetings, a lot of preparation meetings that go into it. And I'm looking forward to it this year. And I'm looking forward to transmuting my activity in a 48-hour film production activity into a post-production opportunity. And it's just one of the things that's on my list. It's just one of the things that's on my list. A great movie that you want to see that was cut under budget is a movie called Fat Kid Rules the World. It's directed by Matthew Lillard, and it stars Billy Campbell and Dylan Arnold. The storytelling within that is almost a superhero story without any superhero action. Definitely put it on your list. It's called Fat Kid Rules the World. That, for the most part, was an independent film. So, wake up, shake up. Don't sit around letting Hollywood feed you what you think you should see. Spend your time expanding your mind. Be the writer that you are. Approach film the way that you feel it should be, instead of the way that it is. I'm going to quote my boss, man. Smarter audiences make better films.
Okay. Well, I think we ought to go ahead and end it on that note, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for watching this today's show of the Nameless Nerds, and you can catch us once again on our YouTube channel, and I will be hosting it up on other places as well. We will have some directions for all of you very, very soon.
Just say goodnight and I'll catch you next show, man. Come on.
And so, once again, everyone, thank you much for watching Nameless Nerds. Good night, and have a good night again.
I might show up for the next one or not. I don't know. Good night.
Good night.